towards not needing one.
Comments to her, she's concerned.
No, 3 and Depot Street. Trucks away entering fast.
7435.
Denver.
Denver.
Can you go 643 again?
143.
You go with that 43 you had. I didn't hear any, but I had just looks like we do.
10-4, I just wanted to know if you should be put back 76 to Cabana Circle or to the subject's address.
Yeah, I'll be 23 back on that town property case, and I'll be 76 to the Williams Road address to see if I can find the owner.
10-4. 449 1120.
And 449 1121, thank you.
10-4.
Code 4. 4.
Road man 535.
That's a great college.
535.
Should be. You guys know if our woman who walked into the house. I'll slide up that way.
Caller is now been able to close the front door. He's now pounding on the door, trying to get in still. Still 5 foot, long dark hair, got tie-dye shirt on, and number 21 is over.
We have separation. Inboard now. She's right.
Okay, see if you can hear this on a different computer. Just give me some feedback, guys. Let me know if you can hear this. Somebody say they hear this. All right, good. Thank you. Thank you, guys. I don't know. Crazy tech difficulties. I have no idea what's going on with the main computer. I'd get it hooked up, and then all of a sudden it would go off. So I'm on a different computer. Let's slide things up. So we had... All right. So we had a pretty interesting... line this up for you guys from the juror. An anonymous juror has come forward to complain about security and fear issues. Well, let's read it. Let me pull this up. Okay, this is the juror who has submitted an affidavit to try to keep, and the judge has already ruled, to try to keep their names under impoundment so that the public will not get the names of the jurors, which I think is very fair. I think this was, I think Judge Cannoni, I'm not a lawyer, but it seemed to me to do a fair job in the trial. But I really think she dropped the ball in letting Turtle Boy in court. Not that this problem still wouldn't be here, it would be, but she seems to not really understand exactly what's going on, or either felt constrained and couldn't make the proper ruling on this. Just what is going on. I mean, it's baffling that she didn't understand it, because the Chesney case was her case. All right, I went down too far. All right. The Chesney case was her case, and Turtle Boy made clear what he was doing. So this juror may not have been following the situation beforehand, but has become aware since the end of the trial. And they're going to provide links here and articles and everything, as you'll see. And you're going to recognize a lot of the names. So this is signed by this juror. He or she says, I have read the impoundment order entered by the Superior Court Justice, which found that good cause exists to impound the list identifying the names of the impaneled jurors. As I read the court's order, it is scheduled to expire on July 18th. That's today, unless it is extended by the court, which it was. But it's really interesting what she says here. Now we'll try to read into this and see if she was. Now she goes. This juror, I'm using the word she, but I don't know that. It could be a he. And this juror seems to want to go out of the way to try to not let us have any sense of whether she was a guilty or a not guilty vote in this case. But we can kind of maybe draw some inferences, but not with any certainty. And I first also want to say, if this juror happens to listen to this podcast, I protect your right to anonymity. If somebody ever sent me your name or any of the names of the jurors, I would never reach out and contact you or any of them. I would never release any information about them in terms of names or address or where they work or anything like that. I did get information about a juror that was dismissed near the end, but even that, I kept that confidential. I didn't release any identifying aspects of it, just to talk about her behavior. That person was, during the trial, going into bars and saying that she's a turtle rider and she's going to acquit. So I think that the public need to know that information was just too important. So without giving the details of it, I did say that. This is someone, I respect the jurors, whatever they decide, as long as they came in and made clear that they were coming in with an open mind. If they were not coming in with an open mind, if they were coming in, for instance, let's just say the jury I have jury duty coming up in September, and I'm not in Norfolk County though, but let's say the venue was moved to where I am. I would have to be honest and say, I really should not be serving on this juror, because I've spent a lot of time forming opinions on it, looking at the evidence. So if somebody has done that, they should Not, they should be telling the judge exactly what their opinions are, if they participated in social media, if they follow me, or if they follow Sean, or if they follow Turtle Rider. Especially if they followed the Turtle, though, because he was the original guy covering this case, and he's the one that's whipped up that crowd that is outside the courtroom. So, but that's it. That's the only information I've released. So if you're a juror, I will never reveal anything about you, even if I don't know anything. But if I did, I wouldn't reveal it. We appreciate the job that you did, the sacrifice that you made. The pay is nothing. You get paid $50 a day. You had to sacrifice a lot with your family and your job, no question, in order to serve on that jury. And then there's the pressure you had to deal with a public that is rabid about this case, and with a mob that's outside that is trying to intimidate jurors. So, and certainly trying to influence them. So she says, I am asking the impoundment order be extended indefinitely because I am in fear of my personal safety and the personal safety of my family if the names of the jury are made public. This is not hyperbole. All right. For anybody that's been watching this case for the last year, this is what that crowd is doing. And though she might make some effort here to say she's not on one side or the other, and I think that's good that she does that, but it's a false equivalency to think that this goes on equally on both sides or anything even close to equally on both sides. I have never heard anybody on the side of the prosecution, let's call it that way, or the anti-Karen Reed side, if you prefer. I have never heard a single person ever on that side threaten a juror or even criticize a juror. The only criticism will be is if you came in with your mind made up or with a powerful inclination before the trial. That's it. I think every one of us has been the same way on this side that has talked about it. If you came in and you did your job and you didn't come in with your mind made up and you listened intently and closely to the evidence and you decided there just wasn't enough there for you to send someone to jail for murder, I have no problem with that. I think the evidence is there, but I also do think it was very not well presented to the jury. And so I think it's not unreasonable for a juror. They make that decision on their own. As long as they're doing their best, there's no problem with that. And I've never heard anybody say otherwise on this side. But on the other side, it's not just Turtle Boy. There is a rabid mob. And I've been trying to say this for a long time, and people get mad. And sometimes people reach out to me and they say, I'm not part of a mob. Of course, not everybody that believes Karen is innocent is part of a mob. But there is a mob. It's a large mob. And there's an awful lot of people in it that are, to some degree or another, willing to intimidate the jurors in order to try to change their mind. The majority of them, I don't know if we could say the majority, but there's an awful lot of the people that are outside that courthouse are angry if the jurors don't vote their way. These are people that are engaging to some degree or another. And in some cases, it's a very limited degree, but they are engaging in witness intimidation. For instance, they're all celebrating making these little rubber duckies that say Colin is guilty and throwing them in Chris's pizza store. There aren't many people in that regular zombie court that's out there that are innocent. They may not be bad people in some ways. I can get along with them. But they're all looking the other way. They're either participating in that kind of behavior or they're looking the other way as the people that they're partying with outside that courthouse are doing that kind of stuff. That stuff is going on all the time. They're trying to dox people. They're trying to report, as they did this weekend, where one family was on vacation, even to the extent of pointing out where they might be sitting on the beach. So not so someone could go and get their autograph, but it said people can go to scare so people, to put it in their words, so that their crowd can go and make their life miserable, is the way they often put it. That's the way Turtle might put it, which is another way of saying threaten them, scare them. That's jury, that's witness intimidation. So it's not a big leap, as we'll see this juror says here, to say, to think that they're going to do the same thing with the jurors. It's not a leap at all. So she says, I have read the impoundment order and noted on the very first page that individuals associated with this case have been charged criminally with intimidation. And that's only one individual. That's Turtle Boy. And this is, just grab myself a drink. Should Turtle Boy be in jail? I mean, I don't generally advocate for that, but, you know, how much has he pushed the boundary of what's acceptable here? He's out there trying to intimidate the judge all the time. I'm just checking chat to make sure there's no further tech issues, even though hopefully the mic still sounds good. All right. The juror continues. I also recall testimony from at least one witness who described being harassed by individuals and her family being harassed because of their involvement in this case. So obviously they're talking about this. I would say at least three witnesses, but they're talking about Jen McCabe, Allie McCabe, and I believe even Michael Proctor said something on the stand about that too. And you may not like Proctor for his text messages, but what he said is still the truth. And this is not just a matter of a crowd that's gotten out of hand. This defense team and this defendant is guilty of all of this at some level of participation. They know what Turtle Boy is doing. So whether or not they told Turtle Boy to do this, and we don't know, maybe they did. But even if they didn't, they've condoned it. They've supported it for all these months. They condoned it. When Jen McCabe was at a lacrosse game watching one of her kids, and Turtle Boy showed up to film and harass her. They were aware of the rolling rally. It served no journalistic purpose at all. It served only the main purpose, of course, was entertainment for this rabid mob, and to get as a way to create material for Turtle Boy, and to get views. But the only other purpose of it was to intimidate people. That was the naked purpose of that. They were out there with bullhorns. They were spitting in driveway. They filmed this. The state police filmed this. People getting out and spitting in the driveways. So absolutely, witnesses talk about this. I also recall, let's see, during jury deliberations, we could hear protesters outside screaming and yelling. Now, this juror's not going to come out and say it, but I do believe it's likely that this juror understood what that crowd was cheering for, what side they were on. And given her level of fear, it's reasonable to think that she was not on that side. Not that she says so. During our jury service, the members of the jury would meet at what was supposed to be a secret location to be transported to and from the courthouse by bus. After being discharged from jury service, we were taken by bus back to what was supposed to have been a secret location, where we observed what appeared to be members of the media, including photographers. I was so much in fear on my way home that I pulled over to the side of the road to see if I was being followed. Now, let's put this together. If this was just a matter of the media finding out where they were, that alone wouldn't have created the fear. What created the fear was the crowd, the mob, the rabid mob. And then when she saw that the media knew where they had parked or where the bus was taking them, she could put two and two together and say, if they know, who else knows? So she pulled over to make sure she wasn't being followed. Thankfully, she was not, but that was and remains in her mindset, she says. If juror names are made public, we will be constantly threatened and harassed, and there will likely be a physical confrontation at some point. Maybe this is a dude then. And that's a real thing. Like if you want to do the right thing as a citizen, but if the state can't protect you, it would point at you entitled to protect yourself. But there's risk in that, right? Somebody comes up to you and you protect yourself, you can get charged with a crime. Here's some speaker stuff here. All right. Since being discharged from the jury, I have read multiple news articles about the case and the attention that this case garnered across Massachusetts, New England, and the country. There are clearly people who have very strong opinions about the case and about the jurors who deliberated over many days. I've seen articles, comments to articles, and postings about the verdict saying some very nasty and dangerous things. Some individuals have expressed outrage and anger that the jury did not acquit the defendant. That's true. I mean, from everything we've seen, most of those pink shirts out there thought that the jury was going to walk into the deliberations and come out an hour later and say, oh my God, there's a conspiracy. This woman is innocent. That didn't happen. But these people are delusional. And that makes people dangerous when they're delusional. The number of people in that pink shirted crowd that are delusional is disturbing. And once you have delusional people, even though most of them are going to be harmless, there's going to be a percentage that might not be. And so she is justified in having some fear. But she says some individuals have expressed outrage and anger that the jury did not find the defendant guilty. I haven't heard that. And obviously, a percentage of people felt the evidence was strong. However, I have not heard anybody angry at the jury. Most people that I've talked to on this side feel like the state maybe could have done a better job presenting it. Now, I feel the state did a poor job generally of presenting the evidence. And this is a very complicated case to present to the jury too. So there were some parts of what the state did that was effective. I think they did a great job of debunking the idea of Karen being framed. And doesn't sound like even the people that reached out to Alan Jackson believed that Karen was framed. But I don't think the state did a great job of proving exactly what happened or their theory of what happened. Just yesterday, I read an article in the Boston Globe now we don't know when this is dated, but this article will be in the exhibits at the end. Read an article with the headline, Karen Reed case ended in a mistrial, but the diehards haven't given up. That's the headline. In approximately the 12th paragraph of this article, an administrator of a Karen Reed focused Facebook group was quoted as saying, the people who were on the fringe of being interested in it are now engulfed. The anger level was at 9 before, and now it's at 11.5. The article characterized this increase as a rising rage. Well, there is a lot of truth to this, but this is because there has been nothing but misinformation on this case. And so many now major media sources are exploiting this for clicks and views. It's disgusting. Howie Carr, guy that I used to listen to all the time and read his article, read his column for many, many years. He's just completely grifting on this. Anybody that would put Sean McDonough on the air is grifting. I mean, even the turtle writers think Sean McDonough's crazy. Even the turtle writers think the stuff that because they've seen everything he says ends up being false. Nothing ever comes true. Nothing. And the stuff, maybe it's under the desire to continuously come up with new claims to get attention, but the stuff that he says gets weirder and weirder and weirder. It's really, it's fascinating to watch. You know, if it wasn't so harmful to innocent people, it'd be fascinating, phenomenal to watch. But we're not talking about whether the moon landing was faked. We're talking about innocent people being accused of murder by people like Sean, by people like Turtle Boy. Later in this Boston Globe article, another individual interviewed by the reporter stated, people are insane about this case. If they don't agree with you, they'll try to dox you. And she says, I understand the term dox to mean that individuals will publicize someone's personal information, including someone's residential address, occupation, business address. This is what they do. And this is what Turtle Boy did with the foreman, right? This is classic Turtle Boy behavior. He does it on every friggin' show. So how the judge would not understand that? Was she not presented with that information? She didn't seem to want to hear it. There's no excuse for the state of Massachusetts allowing Turtle Boy in that courtroom or any courtroom ever again, unless it's for his own arraignment. Because he is someone that is bragging about jury intimidation. That's not journalism. For people out there squawking about the First Amendment, give me a break. The last thing those people care about is freedom of speech, because anybody that disagrees with them, they're going to try to dox them. They're going to try to threaten them with smears. They'll dig into their background to see if they can find something that can be used to control them. And if they don't, they'll make something up. Trust me, that's what they do. For instance, the idea that I've pretending to have cancer, or that I'm fundraising off this. So I was diagnosed almost 6 years ago now, and I was actually at the end of my rope, believe it or not. It was widely spread through my body. I'm not here because of some miracle. I'm here because of modern medicine. I got lucky. I was a treatment that was effective, that stabilized the cancer and cleared up a lot of it to a degree. It's generally only good for 18, 19 months, but I've had a longer run on it. The run started to end this past February, but I had radiation treatment, and so far so good. Go back for scans again in a couple of weeks, and that's how you live. Every 3 months you go back for scans, and at some point you'll get that word, well, okay, now it's spreading again, and now it's time to get your affairs in order. The only fundraiser I ever did was 6 years ago when it first came out. I did set up a GoFundMe because one of my best friends, Tom, had told me about the oil protocol. But to get those oils, I was convinced, well, this seemed like worth trying. I wanted to fight, and I have been fighting, but that seemed worth trying. There was something behind it, right? I don't know. When you have cancer, when you're given a terminal diagnosis, you are a little bit more vulnerable to some idea that might sound good, because you want to believe in something. And so with that, I needed several $1,000s to do that protocol. So I did set up a GoFundMe, but then I actually changed my mind. I wasn't comfortable with asking for any money, so I didn't even publicize it. But a couple of my friends, my writer friends that don't even live around here, got wind of it, and so they published it in the writers' forum. And so it raised a few $1,000s, all of it from writers. Every penny of it came from writers. There was a British writer who I didn't even know. I'd never communicated with him. He was in a writing group and he donated $1,000. So there are a lot of good people in the world. And I did try that protocol, and I don't think it did anything for me. It was not a fun month. I was stoned for 45 straight days. Not in a good way either. Because you got to take it every 4 hours. So but I don't believe it had any positive effect. But anyways, that's the only fundraiser I ever did. And I didn't really even ask for money for that one. And I have never posted that link anywhere ever again. The fundraiser, I don't even think you could donate it. It ran out after the fundraiser lasted 30 days or something like that. So that's it. I've never asked for money. Never. They just like to smear you. It's what they do. They make shit up. So I'm not saying it to feel bad for me. I could care less what they think, but I'm just trying to say this is what they do. And so this juror doesn't want to deal with this. And I've talked personally to lawyers who didn't want to get involved with any of this because they would say stuff like, I'm not afraid for myself, but I have a kid in college or this and that. There is a mob out there. It's delusional to not think that there is. There is a mob out there. And mobs form in social media anyways. So, for instance, you could have somebody like the Glairer, say, who just going to stir things up so he can make a little bit of money. And a mob could form around somebody like that because he's more or less completely unethical, right? But it was way different here. It was way more advanced because Turtle Boy had developed these techniques over years. And what he realized was You can control people with the threat of smearing them in social media. So this is why any woman he was sleeping with, and he was using his blog to try to hook up, he was secretly recording them, because then he knew he could use that video to control them later. Other reporters, I can tell you, I've talked to people that even were initially friendly to him. He'd reach out and develop a way. He would dig in and develop a way to control them with smear. It's what they do. And it might take something that has a kernel of truth to it and fictionalize it. And they've been doing it for years. And it's not just Turtle Boy. It's the people around him, his henchmen and women. They may be all henchwomen at this point. So people like Jen Altman, it's what they do. They've developed this for a long time. And so for people to think that these are somehow just truth tellers, no, it's a cult. They're using these techniques to increase their own power. And that's it. There's no other purpose to it. The simple question you can ask Turtle Boy, hypothetically, Aiden, let's rewind the clock a year. And let's say you found out evidence that, compelling evidence that you found out on your own that Karen was guilty. Would you report that evidence to your audience? Now, I think anybody here is even loosely aware of Turtle Boy knows that he wouldn't. He wouldn't. He's the very last thing as a truth teller. That's not even in the makeup there. Now, is he like Sean, spreading lies every day? No, because he's smart enough to understand. And he does aspire, I guess, to be some kind of journalist, or at least be known as that, right? So if you're lying every day, and if you're saying things that are really fantastical that never come true, well, eventually even a lot of your followers are going to realize you're full of shit and you're not reliable. And so he does care to not be that reckless with the truth all of the time. So you develop that kind of reputation. Someone like Sean McDonough doesn't care. He's not really in it to be a journalist. Who knows what he's in it? But he's enjoying his moment of being on radio shows and that kind of stuff. And he just doesn't care at all that he'll wake up in the morning and dream something and giggle and just put it on Twitter and talk about it on his show. And people will believe it. He must be like laughing every morning. He's like, wow, I can't believe this. I've been saying bullshit every week. And yet I add another 10,000 subscribers every week to people that don't learn anything. He just must be laughing all the way about it. So let me take a sip. All right. So the juror understands the term dox to mean the individuals. Yeah. So we know what it means. Publicizing my personal information in this context exposes me and my family to unwanted and likely surprise encounters with strangers who likely have an axe to grind with any juror. I have seen social media posts that were very demeaning of and attacking the integrity of the trial judge. If someone is going to attack a sitting judge, I see no reason why they would not demean or attack and verbally and physically a juror who sat on this juror. She's right. They'll attack anybody that even asks questions. That's how it started with me last year. I was on the fence and just asking questions, and they couldn't stomach that. They cannot tolerate somebody asking questions, just like anybody in a cult. I understand that there are individuals who are upset that an impoundment order was entered and that they are actively seeking the identity of all the jurors. That's right. And I don't know anybody on the prosecution, the side that thinks Karen is guilty. I have never seen anybody trying to get that information. The only people trying to get that information is the Free Karen Read side. That's it. Let's just say that. That's the only people trying to do this. There's no false equivalency here. That's what the Turtle Riders do. That's what the Free Karen Read zombies do. They are trying to find out that juror information. For example, she says, my attorneys have made me aware of a video posted by a blogger / journalist whom I understand to be a person who has been charged with witness intimidation related to this case, speaking about the trial and the jury's inability to reach a unanimous verdict on all counts after the trial. In the video, the blogger, obviously Turtle Boy, initially states that he has identified the jury foreperson in the case. He's identified the foreperson, and he has, Several times he's talked about it. I don't repeat that at all on my channel. I don't want to talk about his name, where he works. I saw Turtle Boy report it, and I believed it. But I wasn't going to spread it. Not only does the blogger state that he has identified the jury foreperson, but also where this person lives and what the person does for a living. A link to this video can be found here. And it was Julie that linked to that. Julie's a hero for linking to that. So I hope, but unfortunately, she's probably taking a little bit of heat for this. But she's a hero because she's spotlighting this blatant jury intimidation. In this same video, the blogger demands to know the identity of the fucking idiot on this jury who did not vote in his preferred manner. And further that whoever, so this is Turtle Boy's words, whoever did that subverted justice, like they helped cover up a murder. As far as I'm concerned, fuck them. That's what I think. So he's saying that if he finds out that information, who the juror is that voted in a way that he didn't like, he's going to say fuck him, which sends a very powerful dog whistle to his thousands of followers. Fuck that person. They deserve whatever you want to do to them. That's jury intimidation. That's the most blatant jury intimidation that I have heard since the Gotti trial. I mean, but it's done with his little dog whistle thing. Oh, me, I wasn't saying that. So if somebody went and harmed a juror, oh, I didn't ask him to do that. No, when you're saying shit like that, that is what you're not really hiding what you're asking him to do. The blogger states in another video posted to X, she's bragging here. Who outed the Chestnut? Should I do a Turtle Boy voice? Who outed the Chestnut juror? Remember that? The one who hung the Michael Chestnut trial in July. The jury lists are public. So I got the jury list and I went down the list and I found the juror who hung the jury and I shamed her, as I should, because it's shameful. But he made clear before the Karen Reed tried, he bragged about this continuously in his blogs before the trial, made clear he was sending that. So when he was bragging about it, he was sending a message to the jurors, hey, you better vote the way I want. And I cannot respect Judge Cannoni for not understanding that and banning him from the courtroom. I can't. I respect everything else, how she handled the trial, but I cannot respect that. I cannot respect that. There's no excuse for it. I understand that the above-mentioned blogger has been accused of harassing witnesses to the case, including by organizing crowds of people to harass them outside their homes. And I am aware that he has made statements in a blog from 2023 to the effect of murderers and those who cover for them do not deserve to live a comfortable life while Karen Reed suffers and fights for justice for John O'Keefe. So that's blatant jury intimidation. That's what he's charged with. He's going to go to jail for a long time for this shit. Trust me, there's no way he's going to get off. So Aiden, if you happen to listen to this, you're going to jail, buddy, for a long time. And if you think Bradle's the guy that's going to get you out, no way. But what this juror is also saying is it's not a leap to go from you're making that statement about the witnesses to you feel the same way about the jurors who voted for guilty. If, as he has stated, this blogger believes the members of the jury on which I served helped cover up for a murder, and he further believes that those who cover for murderers are legitimate targets of harassment, I fully expect the members of the jury will be subjected to efforts to harass and shame them, with a very real probability that some physical confrontation will inevitably occur. My concerns are not limited to a particular blogger. So let's repeat this. This juror is trying not to target someone, but, we'll see if they cite anybody else from the other side. I don't know if there is anybody from the other side that would ever do anything like that. So my concerns are not limited to a particular blogger or a particular side of this case. I am aware that there are other outspoken bloggers, commentators, and groups of people who wished for a guilty verdict. on some or all the charges against the defendant. I am aware that there have been physical confrontation between the two sides of supporters. I mean, that's been pretty limited. I don't think there's any real major physical whatever. I think she's going to talk about, the only thing is whatever went on between Grant and Machado when they were waiting outside in their little seats that they camp out in to get into the trial. Yeah, I to call that a physical confrontation is probably a bit of a reach. I didn't see what happened there, and I don't think there's any film of it, but I'm sure it's a reach. But that doesn't mean confrontation won't happen. And in terms of people on the other side who wish for a guilty verdict, again, I have not heard a single person fault the jurors. I really haven't. Certainly, and definitely have not heard anybody that was angry at the jurors. People were angry at, not angry, people were suspicious of, for instance, the juror who was named an alternate, who shows up the next day in a pink dress. Give me a break. You shouldn't be on the jury. But nobody wants any harm to come. Nobody want to dox her. Nobody wants any harm to come in her. What we want on this side is in the retrial to do a better job at making sure those kind of people don't get on there. There has to be a more probing voir dire into their participation in social media. So I don't think I've ever seen the actual voir dire that was used for this one, but it needs to be more aggressive. And really, anybody that's participated in social media in discussing this case should be banned. And if they lie about that, then that's grounds for dismissal if they're caught. An example of this from two recent postings by an individual who appears to be a reporter from New Bedford. I don't know, Machado's from Fall River, right? So, but that's close to New Bedford, so maybe that's what they're thinking of. In today's posts, she stated that she was in court today defending against the harassment charge against her and her pursuit of counter harassment charge. So that does sound like Machado and Grant, right? And so it sounds like the only two bloggers she's citing here so far are Machado and Turtle. So those are two people that are not only ardently free Karen Reed, but obnoxiously so. Those are two of the more distasteful people that are covering this case. That don't have any interest in the truth. They just trying to grift on it. That's all their interest is. Yesterday, this reporter posted about getting protection from another blogger. I don't know what that is. See Exhibits 4, so I guess we'll see something about it. She must be talking about Grant. I think they're exploiting this a little bit. Grant's not like a danger, and I don't even know if Grant's a blogger. He doesn't have a blog. He just he has a Twitter account. While I do not know the facts concerning these court appearances, it is very evident that individuals on all sides in this case have acted irrationally and aggressively over the past few years, which has caused multiple court appearances by parties seeking protection of the courts from other individuals. In light of the mistrial, there is no end in sight to this irrational behavior, which clearly continues today. Jurors will undoubtedly be subjected to harassment and likely physical confrontations if their names aren't made public. My affidavit and motion should not be interpreted as indicated how I or any other juror voted on this case, or how I or any other juror feel about this case. Every member of the jury, regardless of how they voted, is likely to face backlash from a segment of the large portion of the public who intensely followed this case. I wish to remain anonymous, and I bring this motion on behalf of myself and any other juror who does not wish to be identified, regardless of whether or not we agreed during our deliberations. It was an honor to serve on the jury. It was also a significant sacrifice of time, which I understood and anticipated when I was selected. What I did not anticipate, however, was the likelihood that I and other members of the jury would become targets of intense public scrutiny and likely harassment campaigns strictly due to the outcome of private deliberations. So, I mean, this is certainly not the first jury that has been subject to I mean, so we had, going back historically in the United States, you have lynch mobs, right? So you have someone that has done a particularly gruesome murder, and a lynch mob forms to make sure they get justice. But this is really different here because this is a mob that believes Karen is innocent. Usually the mobs would be something like on the other side. Their belief system is almost kind of a religion, if you ask me, in the way they dismiss powerful evidence. But all right, so if jury names are made public, I will be subject to nonstop requests for comment about. So this is another problem. If you're, at the very least, even if you don't have to suffer any harm or any danger, you do have to suffer the inconvenience of getting constant requests from the media and from people in social media. They'll never come from me. I don't reach out to anybody. I've never, even the sources that I have, they all developed from people that just were interested in the case and reached out to me over time, and or thought I was handling things fairly. So I don't reach out to anybody. That's just, I don't like to bother people. I don't consider myself a reporter, a journalist, so I don't have to do investigative journalism. I wouldn't mind doing it if I had. So for instance, say like Gretchen Voss has, she can say, I'm with Boston Magazine. So if I had, I'm Kevin Lenny and I'm with the New York Times, then wouldn't mind calling people up. But if you're just, I don't feel comfortable calling people and just saying, I'm a YouTuber. No, I'm just not going to do that. So she says, I fear that verbal harassment will likely lead to physical confrontation and physical harm. So maybe this is a dude and he feels like if somebody says something, he's going to come to blows. Or, hey, listen, that could be a sign of a woman too. Because one thing we've seen in this case too is I'm really impressed by how the angels of this case, the women, the ladies, have really been the saviors. It's really been the women. It's been the women who've done the smartest analysis. I'm talking, most of this has been behind the scenes talking to people, so not people that are on my channel or active in Twitter. It's just behind the scenes. And the best of it, the smartest of them, have been the women. But also, they're the knights in shining armor. They're the ones standing up and fighting back for their families and for justice. It's not the men, with the exception of Paul O'Keefe. Paul's standing up too. But it's really been the women that have had the balls, that are doing the fight. The men are kind of standing back and letting the women do the fighting. I don't know. It's not my family, so I can't say anything. But I think that seems to be the case. All right, so let's go back to this. So that's the end of that. But then there's and this went out to all the attorneys and the prosecutors. So, but there are the exhibits. We'll see how long this takes to open. But this is all right. This is. So the Boston Globe article was July 15th, so a few days ago. Karen Read case has ended in a mistrial, but the diehards haven't given up. The judge in the Karen Read case trial declared a mistrial. It triggered a cliffhanger, and in some, an even deeper obsession. And so the picture on the front shows people showing the Free Karen Read posters. Jack Carney, right of kin, with other Karen Read supporters continuing their dedication to her on a sidewalk along Providence Highway in Dedham on July 14th. So, nobody's talking about the right to demonstrate. Nobody's criticizing that. But there is a mob-like activity when you're trying to disrupt businesses, attack witnesses. Witnesses where there's no evidence at all that they have any involvement or they lied. No significant evidence of that. The man wearing the blonde Judge Beverly Cannone wig is gone. The street is no longer lined with people bedecked in pink. Well, it's going to look different Monday. They're going to be back. So I'm not going to read the whole article. All right. So that was Exhibit A. Exhibit 2 is an article from Turtle Boy's blog. Chris Albert confronts loser woman in free Karen Reed shirt in a Waterfall parking lot for taking his picture. But you got to understand, these people are out there enjoying the torture of what they're doing to innocent people. They're using this as an excuse to act like sixth graders who can make other people's lives miserable. Chris Albert is not a celebrity. So if you become a celebrity, then you have to live with kind of the paparazzi thing, right? But he's not. And people are opening his door every day and threatening his business, opening his door and shouting murder inside. They're accusing his son of being a murderer. They're throwing little rubber duckies in there to say Colin is a killer on it, and just on and on and on. They have to live with that kind of harassment in their own community from their neighbors and friends, people they grew up with, because of an irrational mob in kind of a witch hunt kind of atmosphere where people can turn on you. You thought they were your friends, but deep down, maybe they had envy. And so now they're ready to turn on you. Or maybe they're just unhappy in their own lives. So they imagine you into the kind of witch or monster that allows them to take their aggression out on you. And this is a type of aggression, taking pictures and harassing you, yelling at you. That's basically, you've turned someone into a monster, and that's your kind of way of fighting it. And it makes you feel, I guess, for those people, it makes them feel good because they're frustrated in their own lives. And now they get to project and fight back at someone else. I don't really want to read too much of a Turtle Boy article because the dude can't write. All of his articles are written like they were done at 3 o'clock in the morning and published at 4. Turtle Boy says, as you know, we are constantly getting censored or banned by Facebook for what are clearly not violations of their terms and services. Well, if you're always getting banned, then you might be violating some of those things. Twitter has done the same, and trolls mass reported our blog to Google AdSense thousands of times. Well, all right, so that is, if that's what caused it, then yes. If it's caused by some kind of an organized effort, then that's obviously unfortunate. That's different. I don't know exactly what, but I mean, in every show, you can clearly see that he's violating some rule or another. So I would guess that that's more the reason. Jess Machado. So the name gives me chills. And so she's talking about the individual who is accusing me of harassing her at Norfolk County Superior Court during the Karen Reed trial had an opportunity to be heard in front of a judge, but chose not to be. Instead, she claims, so I think so she's obviously talking about Lindsay. See, and I don't, the lawyers who put this together, or the juror, or maybe the juror did itself, the stuff between Lindsay and Machado has nothing to do with the Karen Reed trial or the jurors, but that has to do with Turtle Boy. Machado is now a capo next to Jen Altman, the pit bull herself. So these are two of the people that will be stirring the Kool-Aid at the back of the line and making people drink it. Leave your kids at home. Machado calls Turtle daddy. By definition, that's a cult. Machado was bragging that she's a reporter for the Fall River, whatever, that she bragged had something like 500 subscribers before she started covering this, and now has thousands. So obviously the Fall River, whatever, is not even a real thing. It's just her own thing. I don't think there's probably anybody else that even works there. I don't know that for sure. I'm just guessing. So the judge has ruled already that yes, we are going to keep the names impounded indefinitely. So hopefully there'll come a day where this will die down. I'm sure it won't be till after the second trial. Hopefully there's not a third trial. And when this happens, hopefully things will die down enough where these jurors can feel comfortable and maybe even come forward and tell their story. If a juror wants to come on and talk to me, I'd love it. Who wouldn't, right? I'll be fair. And even if you're free, Karen, even if you voted to acquit, especially if you voted to acquit, but you really honestly believe that you went in with a fair and open mind, then I might disagree with your conclusion, but I won't respect you any less. I will totally respect your decision as long as that was the case. So feel free to come on and talk to me, and you will be treated. I will never be doxxed, regardless of what. In any case, I've never doxxed anybody. I'm not Turtle. I don't do those kind of things. So there is a difference. So let's see. There have been a few other issues that came up related to the case. Let me just go to my notes. All right. So let's talk for a moment again about second degree. So I got some messages, and this comes really from the vapid Roberta Glass, who looks for reasons to come after me, but her reason is simple. She was in my chat and treated always nice by me every day of the trial. And she was in the chat when I didn't direct this criticism at her, but it was at a guest who appeared on her channel. Grant had been saying the day before on her show something to the effect that he's been able to look into Karen Reed's soul and determine that in a way that only he can, because he kind of has special powers and he's a superior human being, that she has a good soul and she's been duped by Turtle Boy. Well, Turtle Boy didn't come up with this defense conspiracy theory. Karen and her team did, and they gave it to Turtle Boy. So it's the other way around. And it's just, it had been getting to a point where Grant had been saying things that were more and more bizarre, and entertaining though they might be, more and more bizarre and therefore harmful, and things that often were not sourced. And he would say, I have a source, but he'd look and there was no source. His source was himself from yesterday or from an hour before. And then whatever he reported would turn out the next day to be wrong. And so that I find that to be unhelpful. I'm not talking about we all get something wrong once in a while and then try to correct it. But it was his rush to try to have the breaking news was leading to problems, but is also his distorted sense of self, where he thinks he did seem to have, even I got this impression when he was talking on my show that, and it was getting worse, where he had some kind of a sense of himself as a different kind of being, almost like with supernatural powers, where he could look into someone's soul and make a connection that no one else could make. Now, look, I like Grant, and he is entertaining. And so I would just like to see him dial all that stuff back and then go on his YouTube channel every day. He could probably do very well. People like listening to him. I like listening to him sometimes too. So he's entertaining, but at least work to make it more credible. But someone needed to criticize him, and I gently did that. I didn't mention Roberta Glass's show, but that's where he had done it on. But that was the moment that right after that, Roberta started coming after not only my channel, but all my guests, including Kevin Mahoney. But they were weird attacks. They were just like, she'd go, really, really, Kevin, really? And it's like, she wasn't really even able to form a criticism. Even the glare can do better than that. So she kind of became the glare from our side. Blair doesn't do much better though, so it's kind of similar. But anyways, so recently people asked her, why don't you like Kevin? And she gave reasons, both were false. The first one, she told somebody, or at least I didn't listen to the show, somebody told me that she said, I don't like Kevin because he said John had an affair. I never said that. Never said that. I only report things that there are evidence of, and there's no evidence of that. What there is evidence of is Karen thinking that John was cheating, at least that night anyways. That's in her voicemails. That's the only thing I ever said. But she's looking for a reason, so she'll say something like that. The next thing is more interesting, though, more serious, because we can talk about it, because I did get somebody closing some pop-up windows so I can see the chat. So somebody left a message saying, I respect you, Kevin, but I'm really infuriated because you don't believe Karen is guilty of second-degree murder. I never said that either. And I guess Roberta has said that too. Let's be clear about what I have said and what I do still say. There's a difference between saying Karen is not guilty of second-degree murder and saying that I can understand why the jury did not feel that proof was charged beyond a reasonable doubt, which I do believe is somewhat my position, or at least, and that's a prediction that I made during the trial from talking to other people, several people that I had been kind of working with who hadn't followed the case until the trial and really wanted to look at this objectively, follow the trial every day, and decide they wanted to look at this like not the way I might look at it or someone else that's been following it for a while, but the way a juror might look at it. And these people had trouble with the aspect of intent. Now, in Massachusetts, there are different prongs that if you satisfy any one of these, you're guilty of second-degree murder. The third prong is kind of the easiest one to satisfy, at least in cases like this. The third prong for second-degree murder involves proving that the defendant's actions created a situation where a reasonable person would have known there was a plain and strong likelihood that death would result. This means that even if the defendant did not intend to kill or cause grievous bodily harm, their actions were so reckless that a reasonable person would recognize the high risk of death. So the fact that she went in reverse 25 miles an hour for 62 feet not long after dropping off John, and even if she had, let's say hypothetically, dropped John off 5 minutes earlier and didn't know he was there was an after-hours party going on. There was a residence there. There were people parked there. So the very fact of her driving at that speed for that distance in front of that house does satisfy the third prong for second-degree murder. And I've said that every single time. However, even though you might read that to a juror, that that's what the third prong is, that does not mean they're going to interpret the law that way. It's a simple reality that even the most diligent jurors, to some degree, they're going to wrestle with this and try to interpret the law somewhat their own way. Now, when you try to sum up what second-degree murder is, the bullet point explanation is malicious intent. Now, first-degree murder is also malicious intent, but it's premeditated. So second-degree murder is still malicious until you lose your cool in a bar and you beat someone up and he dies. That's second degree. That's malicious intent. You intended to get in a fight with that person. So people just, when a jury is looking, the reason they would get hung up on this is because it's not like they're taking a test. It's not like they know this. It's not like they're sitting there saying, I've got to pass a test on what second-degree murder is. No, they're deciding whether to put someone away for life. Now, if you get convicted of second-degree murder, you're not technically sentenced. You may not spend your whole life, but you're spending the better part of your life in jail. So you take this woman there and you have to decide. It's not just some technical process here where you're trying to decide like a machine if it passed this test. No, you have the weight of the world on you. And you're weighing whether or not you can send this person away for the rest of their life. That's a heavy weight. I've been on 2 juries, but I never had anything like that. That's a heavy weight. And so when you're talking about beyond a reasonable doubt, you almost start getting into way beyond a reasonable doubt in terms of how a jury's going to interpret it, if you want to be sure of something like that or feel pretty confident of something like that. So I don't think I always thought it was going to be a problem for this jury to convict on second degree based solely on the third prong. Now, what I have said, though, is that there's a better way to establish intent here. Now, not everybody agrees with this. Now, a lot of people think that that Karen struck John on purpose. That may be. But you need evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. And there's not. The only evidence at all that Karen struck John on purpose is the fact that the alarms worked in her car. So she would have heard something warning her that she was backing towards an object. But that is not really compelling evidence that there's no proof that she heard those alarms or understood them. She's drunk and she's slamming the gas at 75% in a rage. Just can't know why she did that. And my theory has been for a long time, she didn't know how to get home if she went frontwards. So she was trying to get back to Cedar Crest. And she slammed it in reverse because she was in a rage. That theory could be wrong, but we can't prove what happened beyond a reasonable doubt in terms of did she intend to strike John. Nor can we prove that at the moment she struck John, she knew it. And for a while, I wondered, before we had all this evidence here that came out during the trial, I wondered if Karen had struck John, whether on purpose or not, but then sat there for several minutes looking at him and trying to understand what to do, and then fled. Now, that would definitely be intent, because she would, whether she meant to hit him or not, leaving someone behind on purpose is intent in a big time. But that didn't happen because she left right away. At 12, so I've shown, and I'm not going to go into it here, but with bulletproof data, that the accident happened at 12:32 and 9 seconds, plus or minus 5 or 6, 7 seconds. So it happened at 12:30, between 12:32 and 12:16. John's phone last moved at 12:16. So it really, you can narrow it down to within 5, 6 seconds what time Karen struck John. That's in the data. And so that's at 12:32. She got home she logged into her phone, her phone connected to John's Wi-Fi at 12:36. We don't know the seconds on that. So it could be 12:36 and 50 seconds. It could be 12:36 and 30 seconds. So let's say it's 12:36 and 35 seconds. That means it's basically 4.5 minutes. And I've shown, and I've had someone test this out. We won't say her name, but thank you. Glad you survived it in case you're watching. You know who you are. That shows that it can easily be done, and would have been by Karen driving angrily like that with no traffic out there and very few stop signs. She would have got home around that time. But at 12:33, so roughly a minute after she struck John, that's when she makes her first call to John. Now, to get home by 12:36, she would have to be on the road. So she struck John, left right away, and within seconds or a minute, called John. Obviously didn't get it. Now, we saw this behavior by Karen earlier in the day when John was out and she was trying to get in touch with him, and he was basically ignoring her. She's one of those difficult girlfriends that's going to just keep calling and calling and calling and calling and calling. And she did that all the way home. She called at least once a minute and sometimes a couple of times a minute. It's not hard with a cell phone. You're just hitting redial, but still, she kept calling. Obviously, couldn't answer. At 12:37, so between a few seconds to a minute after she first got in the driveway, she left her first voicemail. In that voicemail, she says, I hate you. I fucking hate you. At 12:42, 5 minutes later, she pulls into the garage. We think that she probably didn't have a garage opener, and that's why it went down that way. Or maybe the garage opener, the battery was dead on it or something like that. John may have given her an old one that he hadn't used in a while, and the battery died quickly on it. So you take, Karen doesn't live there. So John may have given her one just that day to park there because of the blizzard. Let me just check the messages, make sure someone not saying the mic's off. So anyways, well, that's an excuse to take a drink too. All right. To refresh, we're on the topic of intent. So she starts leaving these messages at 12:37. And in this period of 5 or 6 messages, the last one comes at 1:18. And at no point did she indicate that she knew she hit him or hurt him or hit anything. She does also in between that call her parents at 1:10. But, that's a little suspicious, but you really can't prove anything from that beyond a reasonable doubt. And in the messages, not only is there no indication of her thinking that she hit John, but she's accusing him several times of cheating on her. So that's clearly what's on her mind. She thinks John is hooking up. And no, Roberta, that does not mean I'm saying that he was. He wasn't. I know you get easily confused, Roberta. Anyways. Now, that's when the call stopped there. And while we don't have her call log for some reason, if somebody has Karen's actual call log, please send that to me. It hasn't come out of the trial. I assume the jury got it. But all we had was testimony from Trooper Garino, and I think maybe a little bit from Trooper Tully about what some of these calls, what times they were and stuff. So we know that at 4:38, she called John again. So her last call was at 1:18 when she left a message. She called at 4:38, did not leave a message. Obviously, John did not pick up. At 4:40, she called her parents. There's no answer. At 4:42, she called her parents, and there is an answer. We have no idea what the conversation was, but it's around this time that the niece reports that Karen was screaming in the hallway, screaming, hysterical, and saying that something has happened to John. Now, it's possible that Karen was saying that on the phone to her parents. Remember, it's a cell phone she's got in her hand, or we don't know. She could have hung up already on her parents and just been yelling it. But it's very close to the same time. The niece had testified originally that it was around 4:45, and that call to her parents where she talked to them was at 4:42. So I'd say pretty good chance that she's hysterical and screaming to her parents that something has happened to John. And that's consistent with what continues. So if a few minutes later, she bursts into the niece's room and has her call Jen McCabe. She's now calmed herself a little bit and seems to be trying to distance herself. She says, last time I saw John was at the waterfall. So that's interesting, right? So she's gone from, let's look at the progression here. She's gone from earlier, before she maybe took a nap on the couch, thinking John was hooking up. Now, suddenly, she's panicking. She's calling her parents multiple times. She's screaming. Then she calls Jen. And in that call, she says, the last time I saw him was at the waterfall. So she's already trying to cover up. But and she also says, my taillight's broken. Now, why would you say that? But to me, the reason has always been, until later on, Karen's strategy, even during the hysterical moments, was always in the back of her mind. She knew that they were going to link the accident to her vehicle. There's no way you can't link something like that. I mean, even a half-wit understands if you get in an accident like that and you hit and run and you go home and there's damage to your car, sooner or later they're going to track you down, especially if it was your boyfriend that you hit. So you're not even thinking that you might come up with a conspiracy theory. So what are you thinking? Well, you want to try to convey to people that you didn't know. So if you're doing that, you might say, it's weird. My taillight's broken. That to me has always seemed consistent. But she's hysterical too, because she's having trouble processing this. And minutes so after she hangs up with Jen, she calls up Kerry and she goes, John's dead, Kerry. And then she hangs up. And Kerry's like, what the is going on? Then Karen calls back a minute later and she says, I think he's been hit by a plow. So listen, there's no innocent explanation for going to sleep on the couch at 1:30 or even just watching cartoons for the next few hours or whatever she did, but doesn't seem like she did anything and didn't call John in that time. So I believe that she did go to sleep, but certainly didn't do anything functional that we know about. You go to sleep and you're thinking John's hooking up, and you wake up and now you're thinking John's dead and you know your taillight's broken. To me, now this is where second degree comes in. Because John was still alive, barely clinging to life, but he was still alive an hour later, barely, at 6:00. So that's an hour that John could have got rescued earlier had she called 911. So to me, you get that actual intent. That's intent. Now, it's not that she intended for John to die or anything like that. She probably assumed that John was dead. But you can't assume that. You can't assume that. You got to call 911. You have to do, as soon as you know, even think that that's what happened, you have to do the right thing and call 911. That's intent. She didn't do that. So to me, that's the only area you get intent in. But that would have been very difficult for a jury to figure out. Maybe the prosecution will do a better job. Maybe they'll have some new evidence or something like that. But there really isn't much evidence to prove. There weren't a lot of covering her tracks things that were done. There's the ring video that disappeared, but they have never been able to prove when it disappeared or where it disappeared from. Now, it seems the only one that would incentive to make that disappear would be Karen, but still, it's not proved. So it's difficult to convince. Larry didn't even really try to attempt to prove that because there was no way he could. So I don't think that ring video probably factored into the jury's decision. So, I think it's not surprising that with jurors sitting there weighing whether or not this woman should be sent to jail for the rest of her life. It's not surprising that they hesitated here to go with second degree. It's really not surprising. And that's all my position has ever been on second degree. It was like that before the jury verdict. I was like, I'm pretty skeptical. In fact, when I asked on Court TV, I thought manslaughter was the most reasonable possibility. And then after that, a hung jury, and then third, second degree. I waffled back and forth between the most likely being the hung jury. I knew the evidence was enough here. I knew not only did the defense not prove the conspiracy, but they probably pissed off the jury because their attempts to do it were so cruel and ham-handed and ridiculous. So I think that we won't know until the jurors talk, but I think that likely had a negative effect on the jury. However, the state took 7 weeks to try to show what happened to John, and the injuries were not well explained. The data was not correlated in a way they could understand. So I don't think it was really that surprising that the jury was mostly just confused. They're not allowed to have the transcript in Massachusetts. So if they didn't put it in notes and it wasn't in some kind of a piece of evidence that they could put their hands on, it's very difficult to put this stuff together. Very difficult. I put it together for people here, and I've put it on a timeline document, but that's because I could go back and look at things. I could even go back and look at testimony if I wanted to. They couldn't do that. So very, very difficult for a jury to do that. And the state needs to do a better job. They need to put up displays like the one that I made for you guys, because that's something tangible they would have in their hands. In fact, I'll pull it up. Oops. I'll pull it up for you guys. All right. Yeah, we'll go back to that. Hold on 1 second. And all right. That's the document there. I'm not going to go over it because we've done it before, but this is the kind of thing that if the jury sees this, and they can, once you submit this as a display, they can take it in with them and they can sit down and look at it. I got to fix those lines a little bit, but they can sit down and look at it and see how the data lines up. 12:20, John punches in 34 Fairview into his ways. 12:23 and 46, Karen misses the turn. She does a 3-point turn. And 8 minutes and 9 seconds after that 3-point turn, and that's at the other red over here, is when she strikes John. And that matches up perfectly with the health app that shows the last time he moved. So something like that, if you put that in front of a jury, it's going to be... Tom, I haven't blocked anybody today. I'm not sure if you have. So I've been too busy looking at these documents. So looks like everything's good. All right. Hi, Andy. Good to see you here. So that's my opinion on those things. I think second degree is provable, but it was not proved very well in that first trial. And even in the second trial, it is going to be difficult because the evidence it's going to be tough for a jury. Imagine if the penalty for this was death. Imagine if this was like some ancient times when the death penalty for this would be the death penalty would be imposed here if Karen is found guilty of second degree. So would those jurors be able to commit Karen to death based on that evidence? I don't think so. So now it's not a death penalty, but you're putting her away for probably her life. And that's a really thing. Before I leave the live, Sonny, all right, checking Sonny's. Okay, so Sonny wants us to promote her channel, and let's do that for her. What should I put on? Well, let's bring it in. Sonny, we can do this for you. I know your real name too, but I guess I'm not supposed to say it here, so. So this is Sonny Spirit, and this is a new channel that she's been working on. Looks like a lot of Karen Reed coverage, some clips and stuff like that. So we'll put it, I'm going to link to it here too. So the link I just added. I don't know. Is there one we should click on here, Sonny? Let's click on this.
The negative or hate that's directed towards me, mostly me and my mother, is because we support these people who are
hate towards the victim's brother
their lives have been turned upside down and partially ruined.
and mother.
17-year-old kid at the time, his life has been turned upside down and ruined. I've gotten to know the Alberts through all this, and they're all good people.
They didn't know the Alberts.
crazy conspiracy theory.
Do you think that they would protect the Alberts if they thought that they killed their brother/son?
Absolutely.
Common sense. Would you?
Karen Reed show. You know, she walks through a crowd that cheers her on. She goes out in public, takes pictures, signs autographs. She's just living her life like nothing's ever happened. Meanwhile, my brother's been gone for almost 2.5 years.
Hopefully you guys can hear this. I don't have my...
Go back to who the victim is in this. It's not her. It's my brother.
What do you want people to know about John? You call him Johnny. They call him JJ.
headphones on, so I can't hear it.
I mean, my older brother. So, I mean...
O'Keefe, if I can help in any way, if I can do some civil action, something, help you get Josh Levy to make an announcement FBI is done, please.
Negative or hate that's directed towards me. Mostly me and my mother.
All right, Sonny, we'll do it again for you too on some other show, but happy to help and good luck with the channel. It looks like you're off to a very good start there for a new channel. You get a lot of content on there. So everybody go in and subscribe to Sonny's channel, please, and give her a chance and check it out. And maybe sometime she'll come on this channel and talk about what she's up to. That would be cool. Would you be willing to do that, Sonny? Come on our channel and let us know what content you're interested in and what projects you're working on. Okay, I'm gonna go to chat. Just take on a few questions and then call it a night. Unfortunately, those technical issues for earlier where I was over a half hour trying to struggle with them. This must be something wrong with that computer, or at least I don't know. I rebooted it a bunch of times. This is a good computer too, but oh, okay. So Sonny will come on sometime. All right. Everybody support Sonny. So we'll look at the chat. So Monday, as people know, we'll be in Dedham. And we'll be filming. No, I'm not selling that film. There's a lot of fake stuff that gets put out there. But the people from Unsolved are interested in the film. And looking at what we get, because they are gone for a few weeks. They've been here for covering this for months, and then they'll be gone and they're coming back. But no, I'm not selling it to them. So if somebody wants to show up and tell their story, and we want to hear anybody that's civil and reasonably intelligent and wants to tell us their story. Doesn't matter if they're a pink shirt or a blue shirt, or anywhere in between. So just get on and talk to us. As far as FOIAs, I'm not sure what I can say about it, but that's someone in the works, Colin. But that doesn't, it's expensive to do a FOIA. And the people that are working on that are weighing how much whether it's worth the investment, because in all likelihood, it's going to come back empty. They're just not going to show anything, especially because what they're going to do is they're going to say this is under investigation. But also some of this stuff, for instance, one thing that people might like to know is what exactly did they order from the ARCA guys? But if it was done over the phone, there's no documents, so there obviously was some paperwork, but if the specific instructions that were conveyed to tell the ARCA guys what they were looking for, if it's over the phone, there's no record. But even to the extent that it's not, they can just say, well, this is still under investigation, so we're not turning anything over. But they still keep your money. So there's a lot of before you is under consideration. So like I said, trust me, people are not standing back anymore. What Josh Levy did here is extremely suspicious. I would say beyond suspicious. And there's a lot in the works to get to the bottom of what happened. Now, the trick is sometimes these things take years. And by then, the second trial was over. And it'll be really helpful to find this out before the second trial. But that's going to be very, very difficult. But that is definitely the goal, is to find out, to expose really what went on with Josh Levy and the U.S. Attorney's Office and several of his FBI agents in their corrupt interference with the state's murder investigation. Let's just call it that, because that's what the evidence suggests. Yeah, I predict you're going to see Josh Levy at some point. He's going to take a graceful. In fact, his last press conference about a month ago, he got everybody together and he was bragging about how much he'd cleaned up the office since Rachel Rollins left. That almost sounds like you're getting ready to leave. And I predicted that months ago, that Josh Levy has no way out of this except to just leave and then hope that by the time the reports come out and expose what, it may not completely come out, but even if it comes out, it's forgotten. And that's how they, so he's going to go back to ropes and gray and be a partner and make millions of dollars a year. And there'll be no price paid for the corruption that he did. He'll never have to truly explain his actions. If he's a man of integrity, he will. But the one thing that we've seen in this case is that integrity is a rarity. You would think that most people are essentially have integrity, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So it's very frustrating. I kind of had taken a position before this case that most people have a level of integrity, and pushed in the right circumstances will break it. But we're seeing in this case that people are actually willing to break that integrity without much of a push at all. You look at someone like Sean, spent his life in law enforcement and was enjoying the celebrity spotlight that came with this last summer. And once he realized that Karen was guilty, and he knows it, he did know it by this fall, he couldn't bring himself to give up the spotlight. So he resorted to fiction. So it didn't take much for him to give up his integrity. It didn't take much at all. And that's disturbing, how many people have been like that on this. So Thomas is heading out, so that's probably a good time for me to head out. I'll take on one more question to see if anybody... Oh, and Lou, thank you for the super sticker. I just noticed that. Lou, thank you as always. I appreciate it, my friend. You're a good man. Levy has not been punished. Nope. I don't think that's what Karen meant. I didn't see the comment, but... So actually, Tamika, I'm pretty happy with 110 because it's a good crowd. It's an intelligent crowd. And when I was doing this, say a year ago, might be 25 people until once, maybe say like 14, 15 months ago. So pretty happy with it. And it's always going to be a lower crowd if you don't grift. If you want to get the bigger crowd, you have to be willing to lie. You have to be willing to play the game. And I'm not. And everybody here knows that. So, and I'm okay with that. I would rather not have I'd rather not lie to get 5,000 followers. I'm not doing that. So I could tell you a much better story if I'm going to make shit up. And I can make stuff up. Trust me. I can make stuff up. That's true. 150 people and 447 on Twitter. Hi, Julie from Indiana. I see you're famous now. You made the motion. You made the affidavit that was submitted into court. Not really, just you were a source for that, but you're a hero for putting that out there. Donkey says the world would rather not have you. So Donkey wants me to die. And he says, sadly, your cancer scam was a fake. So he thinks I'm faking cancer. But this is what you deal with Donkey. And this is what you deal with with this turtle crowd. And this is, thank you for saying that, Donkey, because you really just demonstrate what you guys are. This is, and I know people will say, well, no, we're not all like Donkey. No, not to that degree, but there's a large degree of you in that mob. If you take 100 turtle riders and put them in a room, what's the percentage? It's going to be 80% of them are willing to do things like that, to say things like that. It's a pretty high percentage. So I'm always kind of glad when they show up and we get to, it doesn't mean anything if I tell the world about what scumbags they are, but then we get to see it in their own words when they come in and chat. Too bad I couldn't actually bring them on the screen, show you guys 2 minutes of Donkey, and I guarantee we'd be like, wow, what an absolute scumbag. I guarantee people will be saying that. But it's not effective if it comes to me. You have to see him and say, wow, which I guarantee you would. We all would. Yep, they go after the victim's mother. They go after the victim's brother. They were doing this a year ago. This despite the fact that Turtle Boy 100% knows that Karen is guilty. Trust me, he knows. He knows. Juror E. Who is Juror E? No, I don't know. I just know about the affidavit. Is there another juror that came forward? Miranda? What did they say? Should I go to Twitter and see? All right, I'll go to Twitter and see if there's anything cooking. Is there someone in particular that I should go? I think by Juror E, you're just talking about the same affidavit that we covered earlier, where the juror didn't want the names to be unsealed. So yeah, we went over that earlier. Spaghetti and Eddie definitely knows. He knows. I don't, I don't see Turtle Boy doing that. It would be cool, but I don't see Turtle Boy having he doesn't have any information that shows Karen's guilty in this. He might have information that would help implicate her in the witness intimidation, but so this is Ted Daniels. All right, let me see if I can find Ted. All right, let's see what Ted is. Ted's a little bit of a grifter himself, but he is posting this. Defense says a fifth juror has come forward. And this is let's see if I can, how many pages this is. Is it just one page? No, there's 2 pages. All right. Okay, it's only 3 pages, so we can go over this. Oh, maybe more pages. 7 hours. All right. Okay, so I'm reading this. This is now comes the defendant Karen Reed by and through undersigned counsel from July 8th, filed July 8th. It's a while ago. As reflected in the attached affidavit, a fifth deliberating juror has confirmed that the jury was unanimous on 1 and 3, that Karen Reed was not guilty of those charges. Alan Jackson, based on the attached affidavit, all of the reasons set forth in his opening motion, the defense respectfully renews its contention that the jury acquitted Ms. Reed on counts 1 and 3, or alternatively, there was no manifest necessity for a mistrial as to those 2 counts. And therefore, the double jeopardy protections of the federal and state constitutions require that those counts not be retried. If the court would prefer to rule on the basis of affidavits executed directly by the jurors, the defense respectfully requests permission to initiate contact with jurors A, D, and E for the sole purpose of asking them to affirm the accuracy of the affidavits of Alan Jackson. So I don't understand that. So he wants to request permission to initiate contact with jurors A, D, and E. And if you remember, B and C were the jurors that didn't contact them, if I remember right, but that other people had basically ratted on them, informed on them. They called them informants. So they were informants that were talking about what they described happening in the trial. But I don't understand why they would need permission to initiate contact with jurors A, D, and E if those jurors are the ones that already reached out to Alan Jackson. I don't know. I'm sure there's a reason. I just saying I don't understand it. Let's go to the next page. On July 17th, I was contacted by Juror E. So why was the other document dated July 5th? I don't really understand. So on Wednesday, July 17th, so that's yesterday, I, meaning Alan Jackson, was contacted by Juror E, true name and identity withheld to maintain anonymity, based on my conversation with Juror E and that juror's physical description of himself, herself, where that juror was seated, and that juror's name and occupation, which was also disclosed during the voir dire process. I was able to positively identify Juror E as a seated deliberating juror in the trial of this manner. Okay, there's a lot of caution that has to go on here. So basically, a juror contacts Alan Jackson, and in order to prove that he or she is a juror, they tell them where they were sitting and what they look like. But you have already had Turtle Boy sitting in court, carefully documenting on his laptop, on his phone, what each juror looked like where they were sitting. So it would be very easy for Turtle Boy to have somebody call up contact Alan Jackson and say, yeah, I look like the black guy in the third in seat number 3. So I don't know how well this identification process is. Juror E stated that she decided to contact me to provide information about the results of the jury's decision-making following deliberations. Juror E explained that the jury was unanimous on 1 and 3, that Karen Reed was not guilty of those charges. Juror E went on to state that the only count on which the jury was deadlocked was in relation to the lower charges on count 2. I took that to mean the lesser included offenses associated with count 2. We had the page for count 2 here somewhere. I can pull this up, and it actually, so we can look at that. Hold on one second. Let me finish the last page of this document. There's only a couple lines on it. Juror E indicated that he or she was happy to provide such information, but wished to remain publicly anonymous. Okay. Let me pull this actually up onto I think this is page 2 that they were talking about. And let me pull it in for you guys. I believe this was the manslaughter part. This is as big as I can make it, but All right. Yeah. So this is count 2. Offense 2. Manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence. In the above entitled case, we, the jury, find that the defendant is option 1, not guilty. Option 2, guilty of offense as charged, manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence. Check one or both of the following: manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol, and or manslaughter while operating a motor vehicle with a blood alcohol level of 0.8% or greater. So the numbers would come in, if you believe the blood alcohol content that was established when they took it later in the emergency room, and the while operating a motor vehicle under the influence probably comes from the number of drinks that she had. That's just my guess. I'm no lawyer. All right. So guilty of the lesser included offense. And there's 2: involuntary manslaughter and or motor vehicle homicide, felony OUI, liquor and negligence. I mean, that is the main charge. That's the main charge. That's the one that comes with 15 to 20 years. Motor vehicle homicide, OUI, felony OUI, liquor and negligence. So that's what they were debating. That's what most of them were debating. And whatever they decided on that for, well, these are the 2 things. One was motor vehicle homicide by operating a motor vehicle under the influence of alcohol, and or motor vehicle homicide operating a So basically you have involuntary manslaughter, or motor vehicle homicide OUI. So she was teetering there on the edge of 15 to 20 years. And it sounds like if the first affidavit that they provided that said eventually 8 of the jurors, I think it was 8, right? That 8 it started out 6-6, and then it was 8-4 in favor of some version of second degree. So it would probably be, if it is this motor vehicle homicide, that's 15 to 20 years. And that's probably fair. And that's probably where this is heading. Can't prove it. I mean, there's no way of knowing what the second jury's going to do. But the state has the evidence. So when I talked to the Unsolved Mysteries people the other day, she said, what do you think is going to happen with a retrial? Who has the advantage? And what I said was the state, in this case. And that's not always going to be the case, but in this case, the state has the advantage. And the reason is because the evidence is very compelling that Karen did this. I've already laid it out. And so the state just needs to do a better job of presenting it. And if they do, she's very likely to get that OUI manslaughter, 15 to 20 years, unless you get that 1 or 2 holdouts that looks like here we had 1 or 2 or maybe 3, potentially 4 holdouts. But certainly most of the people believed that she was guilty of some form of manslaughter. And it doesn't seem from any of the people that have reached out to Alan Jackson that any of these jurors believe that there was a conspiracy. Doesn't seem that any of them believe that. Now, we may find out afterwards that somebody that voted not guilty on all counts will come on the air, come on Turtle Boy's show or something like that and say, I know there was a conspiracy. Well, Psych nurse, I agree. I think there's got to be those parts of the night where she's lying there and she knows, man, I'm on the edge here. I'm on the edge of 15 to 20 years in jail. So, all right, let's take on Gabby's, and maybe we'll finish with that unless something really big comes up. But Gabby says, yes, I agree. Several witnesses that changed their testimony from the original testimony of the grand jury. Doesn't that make you question that? I'm going to say no, because if you testify before a grand jury this year, and then you testify before another grand jury next year, there are going to be discrepancies. There are absolutely 100% going to be discrepancies. If you come on this show and tell me a story about what happened to you last night, and then a year you come back to tell that same story, even though you know it's been something you've been spinning around your head because it might have been important, or you knew you were going to have to tell it again, there are going to be discrepancies unless you watch the episode and, you know, make sure everything is tailored that way. In fact, if there are not discrepancies, it's more suspicious. If there are not discrepancies, it's more suspicious because then it looks like you've rehearsed your testimony. So if you so the fact that there were discrepancies is not necessarily suspicious. And I didn't find anything myself that was any substantial change that was in any way suspicious. I didn't at all. I found it to be remarkably consistent, but just enough discrepancy to feel real. You have to have some discrepancy. And you got to remember too, it's very easy for people that want there to be a conspiracy or want there not to be a conspiracy, but it's easy for lawyers, but especially tricky defense lawyers, the way they phrase their questions to kind of make you think something is more suspicious than it isn't. So, for example, you might say to Brian Higgins, did you get an order to preserve your phone data? Yes or no? And this is what David Yannetti did. Did you get, and he said, Mr. Higgins, I only want a yes or no question, a yes or no answer. That's it. That's all I want is yes or no. Did you get an order on September 30th of 2023 or 2022 to preserve your phone data? And he did get that order. So he's going to have to say yes. Next question. Mr. Higgins, did you subsequently destroy your phone or get rid of your data? And he's going to have to say yes. But if you give him a chance to explain it, which David Yannetti won't, what David Yannetti skips is that he had the order to preserve his data, and then a month later, the court ruled that he didn't have to. So there was nothing illegal about him upgrading his phone or getting rid of his SIM card, which just says identifying data on it and stuff like that. But David Yannetti leaves that out to make it look more suspicious. So you really have to be careful when you're watching this stuff. Yeah, but I think people are trying to look at their testimony because they don't remember specifically. And especially, you got to look at the way, all right, you don't want to perjure yourself on the stand, Gabby, right? Gabby and Mara. So are you two people? You don't want to perjure yourself. So those questions, when they looked at it, were very specific. So for instance, if they asked Brian Higgins, what time did you leave 34 Fairview? He doesn't have to look at his notes. He's just going to testify the way he remembers it. However, if you ask him, what time did you tell before the federal grand jury? They didn't use the federal. They kept saying the word other. But what time did you testify before the other grand jury that you left 34 Fairview? Well, now he has to look at his notes, because if he makes a mistake, he opens himself up to perjury. So it's important that if they say, so as far as I could see, every single time they looked at their notes like that, it was something like that, where they would specifically say, did you testify this before the federal grand jury, before the other grand jury. The way they would. So when they would say that, a lot of times these guys would say, "Let me look at my notes." And you got to remember too, is it's very possible that one of these witnesses, and I'm not accusing them of this, I'm talking about a hypothetical that's based on just how things go in the real world, where a witness could fudge the truth. And when I say fudge the truth, I mean, it could even be perjury, but it does not indicate guilt or anything, or not guilt, anything related to killing John. So, for instance, let's say somebody goes in another case. So let's just use made up people. Somebody goes and has an affair. A married guy has an affair with another woman. And later on, there's a murder somewhere within his orbit. So it could be on his street or with some of his friends or where he works or whatever. And in his testimony, where he's asked where he was at various times in that night, he may list all the places accurately that he was, but he skips the part that he stopped by Mrs. Nash's house and hooked up with her. Now, he could be doing that to save himself embarrassment. He could be doing that because he doesn't want his wife to know, or he could even be a single male and doesn't want to embarrass Mrs. Nash. So, but it doesn't mean that he committed murder. So sometimes people fudge things on the stand. I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying that it has nothing to do. And I didn't see anything here that indicated in any way that any of these guys were involved in any kind of a conspiracy. Nothing. Not even close to it. So, and I don't think the jurors did either. So, all right, guys. All right, so let's call it a night. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate seeing you. I'm probably not going to see you now till Monday, but we are hopefully going to be streaming Monday at noon. We will be. And we'll be streaming from Dedham. And so it should be fun. It's going to be a beautiful day. 80s, sunny. We're going to meet a lot of interesting people on both sides and get their story. And a percentage of that we're going to be streaming, and you'll get to see it. So hopefully everybody's well behaved. I know we'll be well behaved, and it should be good. All right, guys, have a good. And if you happen to be listening to this and you're a pink shirt and you're going to be there Monday, just come over, shake our hands. We'll be nice. Tell us whatever it is you want to tell us, and we'll be listening. But obviously, we listen to both sides.